Assalamu alaikum, and again, as usual, welcome to the English literature course. And it's always nice to have you back here. I know you don't have a choice, but it's always good to see you. Today, we move on to speak. We stay in the Renaissance or the Renaissance, but today we move from drama to poetry. And I know I said something about poetry when we spoke about Shakespeare and the sonnet, and also when we said that drama was mainly written in verse. Don't forget this. It was written in poetry. Mainly. Not everything was verse, because sometimes the poet, the dramatist, like Shakespeare, would shift from blank verse to prose. To prose, like we saw with Shylock. Today we'll speak about the Renaissance poetry and the rules of decorum. So we have 4 major points. 3 poets, but we have one literary term we need to know. Remember, we spoke in the past about censorship. We spoke about patronage. We spoke about the English canon. Remember? You should know them. And again, the English canon is basically the most important literary works. The literary works that are deemed to be famous and of universal theme. That we still study. We still, until this very day, research and study. Today, I'll talk about the rules of decorum before I mention 3 Renaissance poets. So, the rules of decorum. You know what decorum is? Decor? Yeah. This is where it comes from. Decor.
Decorations.
Decoration, in a way, yeah. So decor is something that is probably organized in a particular way.
Organized in a beautiful way.
In a beautiful way. In a way that would attract people, would make people say, wow, this is beautiful. So there's this. Decor, decoration, decorum. The rules of decorum are originally ancient rules from the time of the Roman, Empire and Roman literature. Now there is a famous man, critic and poet named Horace. Horace studied the greatest literary works of ancient Greece. Homer, the Iliad, the Odyssey, and other literary works that we still hear about nowadays and probably study. He said, okay, if we want to write great literature, we need to imitate great literary works. Okay? Again, how do you produce great work? How do you write great literature, great poetry?
By great words.
In the English canon, or the canon in general, the canon has, the canon, write it again, many works. And, for example, Shakespeare is a canonical writer, remember? Yes. So if we want to study great literature, we go to Shakespeare and other famous writers. So he studied the great literary works and came up with certain rules. And he described these rules as the rules of decorum. Like when you behave, there are rules of etiquette, how to be, cool and polite and stuff. In poetry, in literature, these are similar to the rules of etiquette, rules of decorum. And the rules of decorum, again, determined long time ago by Horace, were followed in Europe and in England even 1,000 years later, and even 1,000, probably 500 years later. Many great critics and poets believe that only by imitating great literary works we can provide our readers and the audience with great literary works. So why did Horace determine these rules? So that poets can imitate them. In brief, there are 3 points here I need to speak about. So again, the rules of decorum are the rules that teach aspiring poets to write good poetry. Do you want to write good poetry? Or you need to study these rules. You need to follow these rules. What are they? Number 1. Number 1, when it comes to the theme or the subject matter. What should I write about? What should I write about? Can I write about anything? Can I write about my cat?
No.
Probably a flower. Can I write about, I don't know, I was sick? Can I write about my sickness maybe? Now in the rules of decorum they say your theme, the topic, has to be of great importance. Sometimes described as, determined here, should have universal truths, universal value. Moral. It has to touch very important subjects. Not only personally, and generally it should be collective for the whole, something that affects the whole society. And that's why we find the literature of that time focusing more on kings and queens, the royal family, about battles, about epics, about great fighters, about knights, about noblemen, because they believed this is where the important issues lie. They lie with these people in the palace, in the court, out, in the battlefield. And even when you speak about other relationships between man and woman, you have to speak about, love, like courtly love. Love between probably noble people. Idealism. There's a lot of idealism here in this sense when we speak about this. Idealism, opposite of, in a way, realism. There's a lot of mithaliya here. So number one, I want to write poetry. You go to one of these poets or critics, he tells you, listen, don't write about everything. Don't write about your sandwich, your pizza, your cat or bird. You need to write, poetry has to be about highly important, highly sophisticated subject matters. Issues with universal truth. Like in Hamlet, for example. Like in Othello, like in The Merchant of Venice. There are issues that are still relevant and important. That's number one. Number two, the language. Okay. There's something called poetic language. Meaning, does poetry have special language? For those people, yes. This word is poetic, use it. This word is not poetic, you don't use it.
You would look silly if you use it in real life.
And vice versa, probably. So, according to the rules of decorum, the language of literature has to be powerful, strong, highly embellished, sophisticated language, poetic language. So the diction here, dictionary,
Yeah.
diction has to be powerful and strong, beautiful and attractive. Not only that, it has to be arranged in a beautiful way. You choose your words carefully. Remember when we said in Shakespeare, and every fair from fair sometime declines. Beautiful line. Because of the choice of words, because how words are arranged, because of the sound. Remember we said there is alliteration in every fair from fair sometime declines. Because the sound here reflects the mentality, the atmosphere of sadness, the emotion of, we are all going to die. The sadness here, in a way. So the language has to be elite language, strong language, powerful language, highly sophisticated, embellished language. Because when you write about great things, you use great language, the rhetoric, the metaphors, the literary devices, everything. That's two. And then finally, the form or the structure. The form. So here we speak generally here, there is the content.
What's in
The content. محتوى يعني. The form, the shape, what you see when you look at the text. So what about the structure? The structure has to be highly organized. Highly regular. Well written, well structured, well constructed. A very clear example here is the sonnet. The sonnet in many ways represents this. It has fixed 14 lines. Every line has 10 syllables. And there is a fixed rhyme scheme. In Shakespeare, A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, E, F. Yeah, you know Gigi already. In Petrarch, Italian sonnet, A, B, B, A, A, B, B, A, C, D, C, D, C, D. Okay?
Yeah.
This is fixed in many ways. And again, it talks about love, the destructiveness of time, the passing of time, about loss, about immortality, about poetry, about beauty. Universal themes. He uses, listen, Shakespeare uses nature here. He says, shall I compare thee to a summer's day? But that's it. He uses nature as a kind of simile or metaphor. He doesn't talk in detail about nature. He brings nature to compare. He uses nature. He exploits nature here. This is what is meant by the rules of decorum in brief. So generally, the rules of decorum dictate that a poem, a text, a literary text, has to have an elegant style, a grand style. Strong language, powerful language in the sense that it is highly embellished. Many people believe that this idea is elitist. Again, remember elitist? You know elitist? Yeah, elitist meaning that only only educated people understand this. And only educated people can write poetry. In a way, yes, this idea of the rules of decorum. So if you don't study the language, the literature, the rhetoric, if you don't study how to write poetry, you will not be able to write poetry in many ways. This is what we mean by, in brief again, simply speaking, by the rules of decorum. In the Renaissance, people generally were following these rules. Because when Shakespeare goes to the grammar school, he studies rhetoric, he studies this. When Marlowe goes to university, he studies ancient Greece and drama and ancient drama and Roman literature, Italian literature. He studies these rules of decorum. Yes?
Shakespeare wasn't educated.
He went to a grammar school. Yeah. He went to a grammar. Even sometimes, listen, we do things, we don't know that we are following a particular opinion because we were born this way and we lived in a particular life where there are particular rules. So sometimes we don't feel that there are rules because they are there. They are there. We are born, we grow up, we go to university, we get married, we have kids, we have a job, we do what we achieve our dreams and things in life. But we sometimes don't realize that we were following particular rules, decided not by us, but by people who died probably 100, 200 years ago. So we'll see three poets here who, in a way or another, were applying these rules. And we'll comment on this and see how things go. The first text, is by Christopher Marlowe. We come back to Christopher Marlowe.
Yes.
Remember I said we have to go back to him as a poet, not as a dramatist. He has a famous poem, one of the most famous poems in English literature. It's a canonical text. It's called The Passionate Shepherd. The Passionate Shepherd. The Passionate Shepherd to His Love. Clearly the title suggests that it's a love poem. Can someone read? Okay, please.
Come live with me and be my love, and we will all the pleasure through that valleys, frogs, hills, and fields, woods or steepy mountains, hills, and we will sit upon the rocks, seeing the shepherd feed their flock by shallow rivers, to whose fields falls bright sing my brain.
Melodious birds sing madrigals, and I will make these beds of roses and 1,000 fragrant posies, a cap of flowers, and a kirtle embroidered all with leaves of myrtle, a gown made of the finest wool, which from our pretty lambs we pull, fair lined slippers for the cold, with buckles of the purest gold, a belt of straw and ivy buds, with coral clasps and amber studs. And if these pleasures may thee move, come, live with me, and be my love. The shepherds, swans, shall dance and sing. For thy delight each May morning, if these delights thy mind may move, then live with me and be my love. It's a very beautiful poem here. Listen to the poem.
The Passionate Shepherd to His Love by Christopher Marlowe. Come live with me, and be my love, and we will all the pleasures prove, that valleys, groves, hills and fields, woods or steepy mountain yields. And we will sit upon the rocks, seeing the shepherds feed their flocks by shallow rivers, to whose falls melodious birds sing madrigals. And I will make thee beds of roses, and 1,000 fragrant posies, a cap of flowers, and a kirtle, embroidered all with leaves of myrtle, a gown made of the finest wool, which from our pretty lands we pull, fair lined slippers for the cold, with buckles of the purest gold, a belt of straw and ivy buds, with coral clasps and amber studs. And if these pleasures may thee move, come live with me and be my love. The shepherd swain shall dance and sing for thy delight each May morning. If these delights thy mind may move, then live with me and be my love.
Interesting. What do you think? We're going to study only the first 2 lines. Okay. So what do you think? What do you think? Yeah, please.
He invites his beloved one to live with him, so they're all live in nature. He's a kind of romantic.
Okay, that's a very romantic thing. What is he offering here?
Come and live with me.
A pleasure.
And
To live with him.
and the pleasure, one pleasure, all the pleasures. What are they? Does he mention some of them?
Purest gold.
Aha, the purest gold, amber and slippers and the wool and the flowers and the posies and the roses, many things. This is a courtly love poem, a love poem, but generally it's about elegant kind of love, because this is the most beautiful woman and this is the most romantic lover here. But let's see what the text itself says. Remember, the text, the title is The Passionate Shepherd. The poet is Christopher Marlowe, but the speaker is the shepherd. Who's the shepherd?
The one.
What does he do? What does he do in life? Yeah. Generally, a shepherd, okay, he takes care of sheep. So generally, he could be a poor man. Someone who doesn't have a skill. He can be a goldsmith or a smith or anything. Coppersmith. So he goes to take care of somebody else's sheep. So maybe he doesn't own the sheep or the dog or even the stick or the staff he has.
That's where he got all the romantic. He's always in the nature.
Okay, he's there.
Yes.
But my question is, does he own anything?
No, he doesn't.
Can he offer his beloved
No.
gold, let alone purest gold? So it's not only gold, it's the purest gold. We'll see. So the poem, did you count? Did anybody count the number of syllables here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 syllables means 4 feet. Generally, 2 syllables make and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Highly regular. The whole poem has 4 feet each. This is again the structure, the decorum, fixed. What about the rhyme? What do you think?
Imperfect rhyme.
When you look at this,
Imperfect
love,
rhyme.
just look at it, don't read. O-V-E, O-V-E, they could rhyme easily. But when you read them, they don't rhyme 100%. And this is generally called imperfect rhyme. Now, my point, listen to me. I said this before and I have to repeat it again. My point is that generally, every word in a poem is selected by the poet carefully, is placed in its particular place in order to achieve the highest, utmost impact.
There's a reason behind it.
So there is a reason usually behind this. Now, when we read this romantic poem, beautiful line, very musical. By the way, if you go to YouTube and look it up, many people sing this. So come live with me and be my love, and we will all the pleasures prove. So this creates some kind of trouble, some kind of conflict, the imperfect rhyme. Like, oh my God, why is everything, he's saying everything is perfect. I own everything. We'll have all the pleasures. But then, all of a sudden, there is an imperfect rhyme. So in
reflect the
Yeah?
word itself. That's something wrong.
Oh, interesting.
Like he is lying and he could.
So generally, if there is an imperfect rhyme, we need to check if there is something wrong in the text itself or what it means. So again, we go back. This is a speaker who claims that he has all the pleasures. But when you go back and realize that this is not a king, this is the language of a king or a prince, a noble man, a very rich man. But then we see that he is only a shepherd, with all due respect, of course, to shepherds. He can't have gold. He can't have the purest gold, of course. So the fact that the speaker is in a way lying, exaggerating, trying to deceive his love is exposed here. Exposed by the imperfect rhyme. So generally, in brief, the imperfect rhyme creates tension. You know tension? Conflict. Some kind of conflict. What does it mean, tension? Tension, the whole poem is romantic, everything goes fine. And then all of a sudden there's something
Wrong.
like you are in a plane and the ride is smooth, and then all of a sudden there's something, you just put your seatbelt. And here it happens like this. Everything is smooth, cool,
Surprising.
romantic, the music, the words. And then all of a sudden there is this bumpy road. And then what's going on? There's imperfect rhyme. And imperfect rhyme generally creates tension, conflict. We go to resolve the conflict, and then we find it in the fact that the speaker is the shepherd who doesn't own much, but he's promising his beloved everything.
It's a couplet.
It is a couplet, but the rhyme is imperfect here. So 4 feet, 8 syllables. A. About courtly love, idealized love. This is how the poets again were following the rules of decorum of that time. This is Christopher Marlowe. Any question about Marlowe?
What about the whole rhyme for the poem?
Okay, we'll go back if you want to check this. What do you think?
A, B, B.
Okay, so A, B, B. When you begin a new stanza, you go back to A. This is the rule. So, rocks and flocks, A, B, B. Again, roses, poses, cattle, mattle, wool, pull, cold, gold, buds, studs, move, love, and the imperfect rhyme comes back again. So the whole poem has a very regular rhyme scheme. A, B, B. Couplet, couplet. In all of the stanzas. So again, when you begin a new stanza in the poem, you go back to it. Because sometimes we have very long poems. We don't have enough letters in the English alphabet. Now, let's move to Sir Philip Sidney. Again, remember we're speaking about the Renaissance. During the Renaissance, look at me, don't look here. During the Renaissance, remember we said people were looking for new discoveries, new ways of thinking, new ways of looking to God, to each other, to man, to understand human nature. And when we studied Hamlet, in a way we said Hamlet is the fictional representative of how people wanted to be, what they wanted to do. They were ambitious, they were educated, they were people of knowledge and learning. Now, Sir Philip Sidney, this friend of ours, is the real life Hamlet. In the sense that, number one, he was a prince. Sir. The word sir in English, you can speak to someone you don't know, sir, excuse me. But here, sir, he is a knight. Not night and day, like night.
Soldier.
Yeah. This is a title given by the king or the queen to certain people who achieve great things. So he was a poet. He was a nobleman. He was a fighter. So he was the real life Hamlet. And even he died in battle. Hamlet died in battle, fighting. Young. He was, like Christopher Marlowe, was 32 when he passed away, when he was killed. Probably a martyr, yeah? He died a martyr. A hero. A man of principles, defending them, fighting. So again, in a way, reviving the old English mentality of knights and heroes and fighters. Now, his greatest work is Astrophel and Stella. Astrophel and Stella, in a way or another, like Romeo and Juliet, but this is poetry. Astrophel loves Stella, but he can't have her. So this is a very long poem, and the poem consists of many sonnets. Because again, he uses this form as the best form to write poetry to his beloved. But again, sadly, he can't have her. So again, ambition, loss, and gain are also themes. So let's see this extract from the text. The extract in many ways represents the mentality of people in the Renaissance. This is an extract from Astrophel and Stella. Before we read, can we check the rhyme scheme? Dust, A, first letter of the alphabet. Is it the same sound here again? No? Regular, very musical. Can you count the syllables, someone? How many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Wait. Leave me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Interesting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Can you check the book? Is this written correctly? Yes. Leave me, O love, which reaches but dust. But to dust. Yeah, something is missing. So we have 10 syllables here. And then 10 syllables, 10 syllables, 10 syllables. Meaning?
5 feet.
5 feet.
Yeah, reaches. Reaches.
That's 2 syllables.
What is a syllable?
Sound.
A sound, or more, or one or two. Like at least we have one sound, probably 2 or more, but with a vowel sound. So the word cat, cats, cats, still 1. Teach, 1 syllable. Teaches, teaching, teacher, teacher, 2. Teachers, still 2. Teachers, teach, 1. Teacher, teacher, 2. Teaching, 2. Teaches, 2. Reteach, also 2. So it depends on how many vowel sounds. It's about the sound, not the letter. Cry, cries, also 1. Cried, also 1. Cried, I, cried. Crying, 2. Crier, also 2. So we go for 10, 10, 10. Well structured, well organized, also poetic. Someone read, please.
Yes.
Okay.
Leave me, O love, which reaches but to dust, and thou, my mind, aspire to higher things. Grow rich in which never take trust, whatever fades, but fading pleasure brings.
Okay, so thou means you. Reaches is reach, because the subject in the Old English they added st or est for takes is takes, because in the past Middle English they added th instead of s for he, she, it. Doth, does. Hath. So what's going on? What do you understand from this? Okay, he couldn't have hair. So what is he doing? What is he suggesting? Okay, by?
Leave me.
Okay, so there is a personification here, right?
Yes.
Love can't talk back.
Yes.
In a way, it could be an apostrophe. Leave me, oh love. There's loss, despair, agony, sadness,
Upset.
which reaches but to dust. And thou, my mind. He's addressing his mind.
That's a pretty.
He wants to achieve higher things, greater things. If he can't have his love, he wants to aspire for greatness, for perfection, for great reputation, probably more than wealth. Because he says here, grow rich, but not rich by having a lot of money or even gold, although funnily, ironically, gold doesn't rust. You know rust? Metal, rust, solder. So he wants to grow rich, not in money, but in things that don't rust. And the things that don't rust are what? Your name, your reputation, your achievement. Probably when your poetry doesn't. Your writing. The memories you leave behind.
How famous you become.
How famous you become. For good things generally.
Yeah.
Whatever fades, but fading pleasure brings. This reminds me of Shakespeare's every fair from fair sometime declines. Sometime. What does it mean? Can you translate it into Arabic? Can you explain it? Whatever fades, but fading pleasure brings. Yes, please.
أنه لا أستطيع إخفاء هذا الحب لأنه يجلب لي السعادة. إخفاء الحب يجلب.
You're adding too much to the line. The word love is not there.
But he means it.
He means it, but can you translate it word for word into good Arabic?
إخفاء أي شيء لكن الإخفاء يجلب السعادة.
الإخفاء يجلب السعادة. This means like loss brings happiness. It's a paradox. Possibly, yeah. Sometimes when you lose somebody you don't like, good riddance. But no, here, whatever fades, anything that fades means end.
Goes away.
Things that end, like an ice cream, like a pizza, it's the best thing in the world. But because it ends, it's a pleasure. The pleasure it brings will eventually end. So it means whatever ends, the pleasure it brings also ends. There is fronting here. The word order should be whatever fades brings, but fading pleasure. And again, this is how poetic this is. This is the verb. But it helps with the music and it helps with the rhyme. But also it helps with the emphasis. There's emphasis here. But you know what but means here? Except. Istithna. All the students came, but one. So probably whatever fades could bring anything. Probably it's a little bit different here. But also it brings fading pleasures. Pleasures that end. So again, this is a man who aspires to greatness, to perfection, to achieve greater things, things that don't rust. It's ironic in a way, because also gold doesn't rust. But he doesn't talk about gold. He talks about immortalizing his name, achieving things. Maybe a new start. Please.
Maybe for him gold rusts because it's not what he wants.
He wants greater things. Greater things. Okay, finally we'll move to speak about, finally this is the final point, Edmund Spenser. Listen to me. Listen to me. I'll have to remind you of patronage and how many critics, many poets, had patrons who provided them with money and protection. Now, Edmund Spenser, like Ben Jonson, was in a way or another, at the beginning of his life, a controversial figure. Because probably he was critical of, I don't know, the regime, the authorities. So many people believe that saw in him a hypocrite, a man who would flatter the queen in order to be close to her, to get probably money. And that's why later on he was described as the Prince of Poets. The Prince of Poets, Amir al-Shu'ara. And nobody gets this unless he is very close to the king or to the queen. Okay? This is Edmund Spenser. He wrote several poems. 2 poems we will mention here. The most important of which is The Fairy Queen. Look at the ancient writing here. There should be an E here in the original text. The fairy meaning fairy. You know, the little creatures with wings in fiction, in Peter Pan. Magical. They don't grow old. They live forever. And here he writes this epic. This is a very, very long poem. He uses something called the Spenser stanza, or the Spenserian stanza. A stanza of 9 lines. A stanza of 9 lines. He kept repeating it again and again and again. Now people describe it as the Spenser stanza, or the Spenserian stanza, rhyming A, B, A, B, B, C, B, C, C. Fix the thing in the book. There's something wrong in the book. It's A, B, A, B, B, C, B, C. That's the rhyme scheme. And then there is an extra C at the end. See? So 8 lines. And probably we'll check that. But yeah, the CC could be a couplet. But here it's A, B, C, D, C, D, and then all of a sudden we have 1 line. It's like similar to the Shakespeare sonnet where we have 12 lines and then we have a couplet, like a conclusion or summary.
Is it 9 lines?
9 lines, yes. A, B, B, C, B, C, C. So in the Fairy Queen, what does he do in the Fairy Queen? For many people, again, remember,
Celebrates it.
Spenser started his life as a controversial figure. For many, he remains controversial figure because they say that his poetry is, like he was trying to flatter the queen. And that's why the poem here, The Fairy Queen, is about Queen Elizabeth, in which he depicts her as a strong woman, monarch, a fighter who brings peace and wealth to the English people. She brings wealth and peace and protection and safety and security to England. And this is why, again, he is usually described as this poem is the most important English poem or poem in English after Chaucer. You know why? Because there is a strong sense of English identity. So the title, it's about Queen. And who's the Queen?
Elizabeth.
Queen Elizabeth. What happens in the text?
He celebrates
The Queen fights for the security, the safety, and the prosperity of her people. And he indeed tried to revive the sense of English. When we read the poem we just read here, Come Live With Me, there isn't much about the Englishness of the English people there. But here, this is a proud man, a man who loves his queen and celebrates her as the queen that brings peace and money, riches to the money. I'll conclude with a line from Spenser, a line that is so famous that many people memorize it. You should. But remember, it's not from the Fairy Queen. We're not studying any text from the Fairy Queen. This is enough. So the Fairy Queen, a poem by Spenser, the Prince of Poets, who was controversial, but then clearly he became close to the Queen because he was described as the Prince of Poets. He wanted to convey a strong sense of the English identity in his poetry. It's clear in many ways, even in this line. Now this line is taken from another poem. The name is strange. It's Prothalamion. What's the name again? Prothalamion. So if in the exam, if I ask you, sweet Oh, okay, before I say this, I want someone else to read it. I see how you do that. Yes.
Sweet things run softly till I end my song.
Okay, someone else?
Sweet times run softly till I end my song.
So here, themes, times, another reading.
Yes, yes. Yes,
Okay.
Sweet things run softly till I end my
Also
song.
themes.
Yes.
What is this?
S.
Themes. Themes.
Sweet saints run softly.
Themes.
TH is S.
TH is S.
At the end. At the end is S.
Okay, generally it could be a tha or a tha, but in English there's a few words where the TH is only ta. Like Thomas, you know Thomas? Thomas Hardy. Thailand, you know, the country. And Thai. Thai food. And time. As Palestinians, we know we eat a lot of thyme almost every day. Thyme. I had thyme and cheese for breakfast. Thyme. Za'atar.
Yes.
Thyme. This is another word. It's Thames.
The river.
Thames, the river. Sometimes some people mix between Thames and Times. The Times is a newspaper. I don't know. In England and in Britain, America, etc. So this is sweet Thames. Run softly till I end my song. And notice how there is a part of England in the poem.
Yes.
The Thames, the most important river probably in Europe.
The capital city.
In London, yeah. Sweet Thames. And there is here another personification because he's talking to the river as a friend. Run softly. Calm down. Run softly till I end my song. My poem. The strong sense of the English is there here. In a way, it's not very clear, but when you read the whole poem, Prothalamion, if you have time, you'll find a lot more interesting stuff. But if you look at this, if you count the syllables and you look at the other lines there, you'll find also a very regular form. Poetic language. What is the subject matter here? The Queen of England. About how the Queen, again, universal theme, important subject matters. In a way, many poets of that time
We're talking about
apply the rules of decorum. Because for them, poetry has to be beautiful, sophisticated, elegant, and powerful. How can you do that? Important subject matters, highly embellished language, well-structured forms. And then you have good and great poetry. I'll stop here unless any of you has a question. Please.
Was he part of the canon?
Say again.
Was he part of the canon?
Yeah, generally these are canonical poets. They are canonical poets. Yes.
You said that Shakespeare followed the rules of the decorum.
Yeah.
The language should be habitable in decorum. Shakespeare used a language that...
Shakespeare, in a way, Shakespeare is a classical writer. Generally, he followed the rules of decorum, but he tried to experiment, to change. We see this in his plays. Probably when you study Shakespeare, you will know more about how he tries to change things. So he's not 100% following the rules of decorum, true. Yes?
Spenser was a intervention. What did he become after?
He became the Prince of Poets. Became a famous poet close to the Queen. And generally, again, remember, generally, when poets write good poetry about the Queen, either the Queen brings them to the palace and gives them money and everything, or another patron tells the Queen, hey, I have one of my people who wrote an interesting poem about you. And I gave him money, I'm good.
She
So,
gives him money.
Probably, yeah. I'll stop here. Thank you very much. And we can talk later on after the class about extra issues.